Hey everyone, it's Maydad here from YNV Health and Wellness, and tonight I'm joined with Nadia Barkos from Chill Technology. We've got a special guest here tonight, but before I tell you his name, he's a family constellation therapist that I've known for many years. He's worked in the fitness industry, he's had his own boxing gym, and he's a great bloke. His name is Simon Mitchell, and today's topic we're going to be talking about childhood trauma and all the things that go with it. But before we go ahead, good evening, Simon, and welcome to tonight's session. How you doing?
G'day, Maydad. Great to be here again tonight. I'm really looking forward to it. I'm doing well. I'm feeling quite relaxed. I just spent a weekend away on a farm, and I'm currently living in my motorhome and looking for land. So it's a bit, yeah, pretty relaxed at the moment. I've left all the busyness of my old business and really enjoying this freedom that I've got at the moment. Yeah, yeah.
That's
Thanks.
amazing, Simon. And I know you've been looking for some land and that you want to build your own little place on and get away to, which is how's that coming along?
Mate, it's been difficult because obviously there's a lot going on in the world right now, and I've been finding it difficult to pull the trigger on properties that I've seen because of a number of different reasons. But yeah, so one is as well that I feel that as the world's changing at a very, very rapid pace, I want to be closer to family. So I think that's part of the reason why I haven't bought a farm where I was going to buy it, and I'm just kind of waiting now to see what the next step is. That there's a new path being opened and a road that I'm on, but I'm not sure where it's going, brother.
Okay,
It's all
cool. Well,
unknown.
when it's right, you'll know, and I guess
Yeah.
I know you'll make the right decision. But Simon, tonight we're talking about childhood trauma. So for all the people watching this now or going to watch it back, I wanted to just start off by talking about trauma and what trauma really is. Now, trauma is a psychological response to a deeply distressing event and basically overwhelms an individual ability to process or cope with that event. This means the person doesn't have the tools or the skills to fix that situation up or deal with that event, I should say. And as a result, rather than dealing with the event, they store it away and they give that event a meaning. And in giving the event a meaning, that becomes a state. And what happens when they put that away? Unfortunately, if ever sometime in their lives that a similar event like that occurs, they naturally get triggered. And trauma is a result of many different experiences, such as accident, natural disaster, physical, emotional abuse, violence, or other life threatening events. And you can attribute trauma to so many different things. There are three types of traumas out there. If some of you don't know, there's acute trauma, there's chronic trauma, and there is complex trauma. But tonight, Simon, it's so good to have you here to share some of your insight and knowledge about the subject tonight of childhood trauma. So, welcome again tonight, and happy to have you here.
Oh, it's great. Thanks, mate. And what a great introduction. Yeah, yeah. I really like your explanation of what trauma is. May I just expand on that a little bit?
Of course, Simon.
Yeah, yeah. So thanks for that great introduction about what trauma is, and I think that there's that really is a great summary. But I would like to expand on that in another sense. Is that I didn't really understand what trauma was until about 22 years ago when I first started my recovery journey, and I started that recovery journey because I was in a marriage that broke down, and for a number of reasons on both my part and my partner's part. But what happened was 22 years ago, my wife was suffering from anxiety and depression and from chronic panic attacks, and she decided to go into a place called South Pacific Private Hospital, and she went in there for 5 weeks, and I went into that hospital in a program called Family Week. So when you're in that hospital, the person who's in recovery gets to invite two family members. So it can be a family of origin or your partner or your child. You kind of that two people come in. This thing called Family Week, where you get to learn about the family dynamics, and you get to learn about what what went on. And it was my first exposure to really understanding how your childhood affects your current life, and how you bring your childhood trauma and adaptations into your adult life, and what works as a kid, how you learn to survive as a child in your family of origin situation, how you adapt as a child. As you get older, those mechanisms and tools, when you into your adult life, no longer work no more. And therefore your life starts to unfold and things start to happen. And that's exactly what happened to me. The way I adapted as a child to my family situation, I then took that into my adult life. For example, lying, because in my youth I had to lie to keep out of trouble with my mum. I had to placate her. So, but in the adult life, you start telling lies and no one trusts you. In my youth, I had to do it to survive my childhood from getting beaten or abused, you know. And another one was to avoid. You know, like I would do whatever I could to avoid my mother because she was intense. So when you come into conflict as an adult, and you start to avoid, you never resolve anything. Yeah. So you don't mature. So these are a couple of things that happen. And anyway, when my wife went into this hospital and I went in for family week, I thought I was going in to support her and help her, and I soon realised I went in to find out about my stuff, and I went, oh my goodness, this whole world just opened up for me, and I didn't know about. And so she went in for 5 weeks, and as she checked herself out, I went in and I booked myself in for 5 weeks straight after. I was
Good
like,
on you.
I'm going to
Good
help
on
my
you.
wife, but really, I'm the one that's messed up, or just as messed up, you know. And
That's called full support, isn't it? That's really supporting your partner. Keep going. Sorry.
Yeah, and I'll go into a bit deeper some other stuff, and because I want to also really get personal about my history, because there's some really deep things that I probably haven't shared in a public forum before that I want to talk about tonight as well, maybe. But I didn't go for 5 weeks. I went in for 6 weeks, actually. I asked to stay for an extra week because it was like, whoa. It was like my whole world was unfolding because of something I'd done. But while I was in there, one of my therapists who I really love, and her name's Nancy Ledbeater, and when there was all these different types of trauma which you're talking about, and she goes, Simon, what's trauma? And I didn't really know how to explain it. And you know her explanation was to me? It was when a child experiences anything less than nurturing.
Isn't that beautiful?
Yeah. So, and why did she say that? Well, it's because a child doesn't have the ability to cope with. It doesn't have the reference points or the experiences to be able to deal with that negative experience because they're children. And the other part is, you know, as an adult, you can reason and you can rationalize. But as a child, you don't, because you don't have those reference points. A child is egocentric. So the child's world is all about the child's world. It doesn't know how to look outside of itself, especially up until the age of 7. Until the age of 7, the child is completely trapped in their world. It's a lot of it's imaginary, and even if you had the most perfect parents in the world, it's an imaginary world that's created that a child has to then learn how to get out of for the rest of their life. Yeah.
It's incredible how you talk about the imaginary world or the make-up world that they see in their mind, their projection, their view of the world, and how limited it can be by the age of 7. And then as they get older, through adolescence and you know, puberty and stuff like that, to the age of 13 and all the way up to 21 and so forth, being stimulated and motivated and influenced by social media and other things like friends at school and stuff.
So there was a study done, and I don't ask me to quote the exact study because I've forgotten, but there was a study done on how many hours of negative tape runs through a child's head by the time they hit 7, right? And so, for example, when mum and dad says no, stop, don't, even that can, because like I said, when a child doesn't know how to see out of itself, so by the time they hit 7, they've something like 30,000 hours of negative tape gone through their head. So when a child is stop, don't do that, or you're naughty, don't do that, that's wrong. The child doesn't hear that is wrong. What they hear is, I am wrong. Yeah. So even the most well-intentioned parent hasn't necessarily purposely, on purpose, traumatized their child. The child will interpret that I am wrong unless the parent has the emotional capacity to be able to say to the child that what you were doing was not okay, and the way you were doing it was not okay. But I love you anyway. There's nothing wrong with you. Unless the parent has the emotional intelligence and the capacity to explain it. Most parents are at the end of their tether. It's like, no, stop, don't, you're annoying me. That the parents blame the children for their feelings. I'm frustrated, or you're frustrating me. This is all emotional abuse, believe it or not, because there's no separation between the self and the action. Yeah. So this is as little as what trauma can be. We kind of often think in the broad spectrum of trauma, like something full on happening. The other part of trauma is overt, which is I'll smack you, I'll hit you, I'll punch you, I'll abuse you and swear at you and scream at you. Or something will be stolen, or an injury can be thought of as trauma. But there's also what's called covert trauma. So covert trauma, which is really hard, you'll hear people say this about their parents. My parents were perfect, but something just doesn't feel right. Have you ever heard that said before?
I felt it.
Yeah, like my parents were kind to me. They did everything. They provided everything for me. They did this for me. They did that for me. But I just don't feel close to them. They don't. And so what would happen is they would either omit, they covertly don't express love and affection. They covertly don't ever encourage you and say, what a great job you did. And so they'll look at, you might have got 99 out of 100, but they'll look at the one, not the 99. Yeah. So there's something like whatever you do is not good enough. Or I love you, but I'll love you only if you do what I say, if you obey my commands, if you fit into what I want, my version of what I want for you in the world. Yeah. So there's this underlying abuse that's never spoken or said, but you feel it. Oh, like that. And so what's felt is in the child is there's something wrong with me. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. And so
so common.
It's
so common when you look back at I'm referring it to my childhood and how common it was when I had everything at home, everything. We were fed, we were clothed, we had a loving, caring home. You know, everybody cared for each other. We did things together. We ate meals together at the table. But yeah, that sometimes just to hear no after a while, I mean, you're talking about 30-something hours by the time you're 7 of repetitively listening to the same thing. Naturally, a child at that age is going to question their internal beliefs, you know, and it's going to have an effect on them naturally. And it's just a human way.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that covert abuse is really difficult, and it's like
I do have some questions for you, Simon, by the way. So you basically, I mean, answered a lot about what childhood trauma is and how it affects child today. Can you tell us a little bit of some of the stuff that you do outside of what you've already shared and what I introduced you? I'm sure our viewers will be really interested to know a little bit about your background and what it is you do.
Yeah, so it's really interesting. I was thinking about this the other day. People ask me quite often ask the question, "What do you do, Simon?" That's the most common question that people ask us, isn't it? Like, what do you do? What do you do for a living? And right now, it is zero. I do nothing for a living right now. That's actually not 100% true. I'm actually doing a little bit of massage. I help counsel a few people. Because I'm on my purpose and my journey to find land. So, but I've been like I said, a boxing coach for the last 20 years. I've been a boxer since I was 17, so I've really boxed the majority of my life. It's kind of, I never had a father, so boxing was my spiritual father. It taught me discipline and dedication, and it taught me right from wrong. It taught me how to deny myself, how to deny my feelings and push through even when I don't want to. It's helped me set goals with no guarantee of success, all that kind of stuff. So, yeah. And, so what do I do now? I simply do a bit of massage. I'm traveling Australia or traveling the east coast of New South Wales to try and find my plot of land to live on. Yeah.
So cool. Simon, as you know, I'm a parent of two. I have a beautiful daughter, Leilani, who's 13, and my son is 𝙤𝙤𝙤𝙗𝙤, who's 16 years old. And I have noticed that childhood trauma is not only present in schools and in classrooms, but also in other areas like sporting fields and social media, where people can use this social, the internet to bully people and stuff like that, and in other areas, and that really can affect the child's feelings. And I just want to ask you, what do you feel you see? Well, what do you feel that is so evident today with all this going on, especially in children?
Right. It's a very different world, isn't it, mate? It's a very different world to what we grew up in.
It sure is.
Yeah. So, can I take a step back to go forward? So what I'm going to say is, what I didn't state before is, when we go through these traumatic experiences as a child, we then have to adapt. Like I think I mentioned it briefly, I had to adapt to my situation at home to be able to deal with home. And we all have to adapt to our home situations. And the reason being is that our parents really are the God representative in our lives. Does that make sense? And why do I say that? If you take a newborn baby and you put them out in the street and don't look after them, what's going to happen to them?
Oh, there's so much.
No, but what would happen ultimately if you just leave a baby in the woods? It's going to die. It doesn't have the ability to look after itself, right? So, because parents represent the child's security and safety and literally life itself, parents actually are the God representative for the child. So the child will adapt in order to please the parents, because the parents are God. Without pleasing the gods, you die. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So the adaptation will happen for that reason. And and I'm going to use what's called Pia Melody's codependency model. She uses, it's really a codependency model. So I believe that the whole world's really codependent in some form or another, in some level. And she talks about the child adaptation. So she calls it the wounded child on this side, which is less than, not good enough. It's defenseless. It's vulnerable, super vulnerable. It can't. It's all emotion. It can't deal with its emotions. So it's all emotional. Yeah. Right. There's this So it's this adapted wounded child. This wounded poor little. Imagine a little baby, defenseless and helpless. Yeah. And then on the other side, what kicks in for most people as well is you've got this wounded child here, but on the other side of the coin is you then have this what's called the critic, or the adapted adult child. I don't know if you've ever heard of that. So on the other side is this adapted adult child, which is better than everybody else, invulnerable, impenetrable, won't listen and learn. It knows everything. It's like you cannot penetrate this person with anything. It's like the bulletproof, right? And so you've got these two extremes, and this extreme is created to protect the wounded child. But underlying this adapted adult child is the fear that it's not good enough of the wounded child. So it has both. And this is what I see happen I really haven't met anybody where this isn't working at in some level or another. Does that make sense? And
Yes.
in my life especially, this is what works, right? So it goes on for me. So therefore, if we learn to adapt for our family of origin, now we've got this new world of social media and peer what's the word? Respect of your peers, or peer pressure, or peer friendships. Your peer friendships really are very important, especially for teenagers and young kids, because they want to be seen as cool or accepted or a part of. And
Validated.
as human beings, we want to be part of a tribe. So we want to be part of our family. We want to be part of our tribe. But now, through social media, you've got all of this stuff going on, and there's trolls, and there's even paid trolls that go online to cause problems. Does that make sense? So this adaptation, or this desire to please the gods there at home, also then extends out in a desire to please the world, and that's impossible. And I had that as well as a young man, even even now, even to this day, I still have that at times. So this desire to please just spreads out. And so you have all of this influence coming from everywhere. And a child that doesn't have any true identity because of the trauma and the adaptation, because you've got the adapted adult child, which is the invulnerable one, and you've got the wounded child, but there's no sense of true self unless the parents are skillful parents and able to give a child and foster a child's sense of self. And that is not really done very much at all now. And the reason being is that their parents never gave that to them. Their parents were traumatized, and it goes back on. So from their parents, and then world wars, and then you just go back. This trauma just gets passed on down the line, and just passed on for generations. Yeah. So
that's so evident in all of us. I think even the so-called ones that feel that they're so well adjusted and they've had such a good childhood and stuff. Like I know you said you'd never had a dad growing up, and boxing really helped you. And thanks for sharing that. But I had both my parents present until my mother died, which was not until like about 6 years ago. But yeah, that's so evident, I think, in everybody. And I suppose everybody could really relate to that at any given point in their life. But I did have another question for you, Simon, and it was really interesting when I look at my kids at school and stuff like that. But what do you really feel needs to be taught to the wider public, not just the children, not just the parents, but the wider public about childhood trauma, to prevent ongoing issues with children, including serious problems like suicide and self-conflict and all that stuff? Because as you explained before, the ongoing voice inside a person's head, when we spoke about things before, and as a young child, not only can you at times not feel validated by at home or by your peer groups or anybody like that, but that can really affect their map of the world, their view of the world, and really their internal view of themselves.
Yeah. So what used to happen at the gym a lot, I don't know if you experienced this, was that parents would come in and go, little Billy or John is really rebellious. He's doing all this stuff, like he's lying, he's getting into fights at school, he's skipping school, he's not doing his homework, he's not doing this and that. We want to bring him here to you, Simon, to help fix him. Right? And so they focus on their kid having all these problems, and they make it about the child. The child is this, the child has got all these issues, right? And because of course he's been through a lot of stuff. But what parents don't do is they don't look at themselves. It's really important that, and the reason being is I think people don't look at themselves is because there's a lot of shame. It's a really big thing to admit, hey, maybe I've done some things wrong. Maybe the way I've parented my child has caused what's going on here, and I have to take responsibility for my actions. And the fact that I never looked at my trauma, and because I never looked at my trauma, I've passed it on. So, for example, a couple, or especially a mum or a dad, doesn't matter, like a couple, they might say, oh, our parents were super strict. They used to beat us, And they do exactly the opposite thing. So they, instead of beating their child, they don't do any discipline at all. They don't ever berate because they want their child to have, they don't want their child to experience what they went through. So on their side here, they were over disciplined, and on this side here, it's just as abusive, but there's no discipline. So here, there was over boundaries, like you can't step out of line or you're cooked. Here, you can do whatever the hell you want, but a child can't deal with that power. So it doesn't know how to deal with all of that power. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, there's no guidance and support system like we had. Like you said, like when I look back on my childhood, my parents were very strict. If I did something wrong, I would get the swack and all that other stuff. But today it seems to be kids are so free to do as they choose, but at the same time, there's no one there to be present, to guide, support, and experience that journey with them or that event with them. And they're left to their own devices.
Yeah, it's really important that parents see their job. Like if I was to ask you, mate, Dad, what's a parent's role?
What's a parent's job? You answered that pretty much earlier on about being a guide and be able to give the best of yourself to your kids. You are the role model. You are a role model to lay down a foundation. But for me, the more I do these studies and the more I listen to things and read, the more I understand that we have such an important role to take responsibility on the way we program our kids to live. And that has such an important impact on everything they do in life.
Yeah, I agree. What you hear when you speak to most parents about their children, and you say what's it mean to be a parent? And say, well, they're my best friend. Have you heard that a lot?
Yeah, I've heard so many young ladies say, I've always wanted to be a mother, etc. But there's no real understanding. It's like having a puppy. It's not, and it's not like there's no real understanding of the importance of real connection, real bond.
Well, it's a parent's job is to parent. It's not to be their friend. It's not to be on. It's not to have them, like everything that you say or do. Your job is to instill, I think, exactly like you said, a set of values and belief systems that are going to carry them through the rest of their life. And so, but what we have now is we're in an age where parents want to be their child's best friend, and so they don't want to upset them. They don't want to They don't want them to do anything that they don't want to do. They assume that children know what's best for themselves. And whilst it's important to listen to your child and ask questions of your child of what they like and don't like, and to consider that, a parent's job with the wisdom and life experience that they have, to protect their child from themselves and to instruct them. Yeah. And at times the child won't like you. They will be angry with you. They will resent you, all of that kind of stuff. But that's what you've got to be willing to do as a parent. Bless you.
Sorry. Thank you.
Yeah. That's what you've got to do as a parent. And because, like I said, the lack of discipline, the lack of direction can really harm a child for life. Because if a child is taught that they can get whatever they want, whenever they want it, that's not a reflection of how life works in the real world, is it?
Simon, I think that we, as a parent, we do have to provide a little bit of freedom, because in that freedom there is growth, there's evolvement, there's the ability to explore, and that's important in a child's growth and that. But at the same time, there's got to be some boundary lines.
Correct.
And that's really important. I think a lot of that has been lost today. But I wanted to ask you something. What advice would you have for parents of a child suffering from childhood trauma, whether it be at school or anything else, that could help them better understand and support their child through this experience?
A great question. So let's firstly start with acknowledging that there is trauma there. Like, a lot of people just think Johnny's been a naughty boy. First thing, for example, he's just doing this and he's just doing that. So the first thing is to acknowledge that that people don't do things for no reason. They do things for reasons. And so if Johnny is acting out at school, why is he acting out at school? Don't make him a bad person because he's doing something wrong. Ask what's going on for him emotionally. Maybe he's never been heard. Maybe he's been told he's a naughty boy his whole life. Maybe, a girlfriend just broke up with him. Something just happened. Maybe
It really could be anything, couldn't it? You just don't know what is in a child's head until you discuss it with him. And that is something that, parents don't really, I don't think really, I see it, they take the time out to talk to them. I mean, how often do you see a family from when the kids are, once they reach the age of 13, 14, when are they all sitting at a table together, eating a dinner like they did when they were like 7, 8, talking and discussing about how things are going at school, etc.
Correct. Yeah, correct, mate. Yeah, 100%. And the other part of that is then ask them what's going on and then take personal responsibility, because on a side note, children act out unresolved feelings in the family. So, for example, mum and dad might not ever be angry, ever. The kid may never have seen anger in his life at home because mum and dad think anger is wrong. So, but the kid is really angry. So the kid's acting out or holding all of that anger, right? So it's about the parents also then taking on and looking at, what have I done that's caused and contributed to the way my child's acting? So that's why that's really important. It's like, okay, this is a family system. It's not Johnny's problem. This is a family systems problem. And we have to look at, as a family, what is it that we've done as a family to contribute to this situation? Because when you look at Johnny as a problem, that's the problem, because Johnny thinks he is the problem. He thinks he's a bad boy. He's going to act out that role really well. But if it's like, we've done this together, what can we do? And let's take personal responsibility. And if mum and dad can get past the shame and the guilt of admitting they've been human, like, it's not about blame. It's just admitting, I'm a human being. I've made some mistakes. Okay, let me own them. How can we then adjust and move as a family together? And that's where it's really important, I guess, to seek professional and proper help, because mum and dad generally, in what I've seen, have never done, most people never do any personal work, never really deal with their own trauma first. And I'd say that would be the first thing. Admit Johnny's going through this. He's going through this for a reason, and it's probably a transformation of my trauma onto my child.
That's so evident in so many ways. You see that, as you said. Simon, it's really great to catch up with you today. It's always nice to have a chat to you and see what you're up to. And I'm really looking forward to hearing how you go with your journey about finding a place and where you end up. I'd love to visit. But if any of our viewers tonight want to get in contact with you, how can they reach you? Are you able to share a number or your email address, contact details, so Nadia can post it up for our viewers to see?
Yes, look, I think the best way for me right now is through Simon Mitchell on Facebook, just through Facebook Messenger. Simon Mitchell, and I'm a friend of Maydad Ronan, so if you can't find me, just go find Maydad and look for me. And my Instagram page is Simon's Fortunate Life. So Simon's Fortunate Life, because I think, I'll tell you a short story. There was a TV series, I don't know if you remember, it was called My Fortunate Life. Have you ever seen that? And this guy was getting into the most hellish kind of circumstances, but he titled the name of this book or this movie, My Fortunate Life. And I kind of look at my life and I go, Simon's Fortunate Life. And I guess if I could finish off before we finish off, part of the framing is, we kind of label things. As a child doesn't know how to deal things, but if we want to deal with our childhood trauma a little bit now in a reframing of things, we kind of label things good and bad. But if we kind of look at things in a holistic framework, in the sense of, okay, I was divorced, I went through a really hard time, and it was a really intense period of my life. Straight after I came out of hospital, we got divorced. But few years later, so it was the end of our marriage, you know, and it was a whirlwind, which I can probably talk about that another time. But like all of these things that are kind of hard and harsh, at the time it was traumatic, but it's really now life building. It's really character building and life building as an adult. Because if we say every time we go through something hard, oh, it's traumatic. No, but how do you build muscle? You can only build muscle under tension and stress. Water can only flow under pressure. Things can only change once it's pushed into a position in relationship into the open. How on earth would anything change in my life now if relationships weren't pushing that, or circumstances, or some tough times, say financially, or business, or relationship wise, or health wise? So if something happens, it doesn't bring all of the things to the front that I need to change. So I think really getting out of the mindset of good and bad, it's more like life is, and it's necessary in order for me to grow as a human being.
That's a interesting insight, Simon, and it's incredible how we're all searching for that balance. Like you talk about, the yin yang and the balance of, father and son relationship, mother and daughter, or vice versa, and the whole dynamics, even with just mum and dad, and how much that can affect the whole household and the child's view and map of the world. But thank you for joining us tonight. I'm sure that Nadia is going to post the details for everybody to, if they want to get in contact with you or learn a little bit more about what you do, if they don't want to reach out to you. Yeah. But one of the things that I wanted to share with our viewers, it was next week we have a special guest coming in, and his name is Phil McDonald. Phil McDonald is a world record holder in 3 world records. He's a great life coach. He's a health and fitness coach and expert that has done some pretty amazing things. He's got so much to share and knowledge about boxing and about some of the incredible things that he's done in his life, like the world record attempts that he's conquered, etc. And we're joining him here next week with Nadia Barkos and myself at 7:30 p.m. Australian Eastern Time next Tuesday night. So look out for that session. We're looking forward to seeing you there. Also, we've got an exciting event coming up. I know Simon knows about it and Nadia knows about it, and a lot of you may already know about it. And for those of you who don't know about it, it's the Honey and Handsome Retreat. It's a one-day retreat that's going to be held on the 16th of November. And it's going to be an amazing retreat with some great practitioners and professionals. Lizzie Abrahams is a psychotherapist and a relationship expert. She's going to be joining us and sharing on family dynamics, relationship dynamics, and so much more. That's going to be a very powerful session. And she's a great practitioner. She's been on national television, in the news, Today Tonight, and so much more. We've also got a yoga specialist who's going to come and work with us where we start the retreat on the beach here at Bondi just before sunrise, where the retreat will start off, and then the retreat will continue on down to Bondi Boxing Gym, where we'll be doing neural transformation therapy sessions, vision sessions, and so much more. Participants will be fed an array of delicious foods from the Up South cafes, such as acai bowls, detoxing smoothies, vegan meals, and just really nice, delicious, healthy foods. With that, there'll be team building activities for couples, and the winning couple will get a prize. There's so much to say about this upcoming event. So if you want to learn more, shoot us a message to Maydad Ronan at on Facebook, or YNV Health and Wellness at hotmail.com. And I'm sure Nadia will either leave a phone number or some other details that you guys can look up, and a landing page that you can all look up and click on that'll give you more information about this great up and coming event. But once again, Simon, thank you for joining us, and looking forward to catching up with you in person sometime.
Yeah, mate. Soon, brother.
Have a very good night, everyone. Take care, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks, mate. Bye.